People always ask about that one magical book, the one Napoleon supposedly obsessed over, the one Wall Street guys used to justify greed. It is Sun Tzu's Art of War, written 2.5 millennia ago. Legend says Napoleon found it. After losing Waterloo, he cried about how it could have saved his empire. Just 13 chapters and 6,000 characters. It supposedly explains every psychological game and human flaw. All those annoying corporate buzzwords, knowing your enemy, they all come directly from this ancient text. Retreating is the best stratagem, or so they say, but we aren't looking at the granular tactics today. Let's talk about the guy who actually wrote it, the so-called military sage named Sun Wu. How did he turn a bloody quagmire into an art? Probably by sitting safely in a tent somewhere. Just another guy avoiding the actual physical fighting. Let's look at his supposedly overpowered life. Type God of War in the comments if you want. I'm just here to read the script and get paid. Let's go back to the spring and autumn period. A miserable era where traditional morality totally collapsed. Feudal lords just relentlessly annexed each other all day. Sunday Wu was born in Qi around 545 BC. Of course he wasn't some destitute young man. He was born into an elite military aristocracy. His grandfather and great-grandfather were immensely powerful generals. So the genes of warfare were already in his veins. Must be nice to inherit your entire career path. The other aristocratic playboys were racing hounds and drinking, indulging in endless pleasure while the world burned. But young Sun Wu was a complete outlier. He buried himself deep in his family's grand library, devouring military texts and tactical formation charts all day. He went into the wilderness to simulate battles in dirt, a genius who works harder than you is. Truly formidable, or just terribly exhausting to be around. The destiny of a genius is rarely a smooth voyage. The state of Qi was glorious on the surface, but its internal power struggles were extraordinarily brutal. 4 major aristocratic families were constantly slaughtering each other. Sun Wu instantly saw through this bottomless destructive friction. He realized his brilliant talents would go entirely unutilized, and he'd likely end up as mere cannon fodder. So he made the only rational choice available. He chose to flee his prosperous homeland of Qi, traveling steadily southward toward the state of Wu, a place people considered a rough barbarian land. Here, the future god of war concealed his sharp edges, adopting the quiet life of a recluse for several years. Sounds like a nice vacation from the bloodshed. While the world burned, he stayed in a thatched cottage, nestled deep within the mountains, far away from everybody. Stroke by painstaking stroke, he carved his military contemplation, putting his profound insights into human nature onto bamboo slips. This culminated in what would eventually shock the entire globe, the famous 13 chapters of Sun Tzu. But his story didn't end with writing a book. His retreat was just gathering energy for a massive eruption. Let's just get to the actual fighting part. His real-world military campaigns made him a legend, decisively thrusting him onto the eternal throne of war. In the state of Wu, he was appointed commanding general, taking absolute control of the entire military force. He was tasked to confront an almost invincible behemoth. Colossal state of Chu, situated to the west. Chu boasted vast territories and incredibly abundant resources. Their military strength was more than 10 times that of Wu. Engaging in a direct head-on clash was sheer suicide. But of course, Sun Wu didn't panic in the slightest. He had a new theory to test out. Devised an exhausting Chu strategy to break their minds, designed to drive the enemy to the brink of insanity. What exactly did this exhausting strategy entail? It involved dividing the Wu army into 3 distinct units. They took turns relentlessly harassing the Chu borders. When the Chu forces advanced, the Wu troops swiftly retreated. The moment Chu withdrew, the Wu troops attacked. Again, the enemy advances, we retreat. The enemy halts, we harass. This grueling game of cat and mouse dragged on. It lasted for 6 long, arduous years. The massive Chu army was tormented to sheer exhaustion. their national strength suffered a catastrophic depletion. Finally, in the year 506 BC, the trap was sprung. The historically renowned Battle of Boju erupted in full force. Sun Wu led a highly elite force of 30,000, sailing up the river on heavily armed warships. Chu fully anticipated a massive naval confrontation, but Sun Wu abruptly abandoned the ships and landed, utilizing a deeply penetrating, completely unexpected flanking maneuver. He thrust his army like a sharp, deadly dagger straight into the heartland of the state of Chu. At Boju, his modest 30,000 troops encountered the enemy, a hastily assembled Chu army, numbering 200,000, 30,000 pitted against 200,000 soldiers. It seemed exactly like throwing an egg against a rock. Yet, Sun Wu harbored no fear whatsoever about the odds. He flawlessly leveraged the local topography to his complete advantage, avoiding the enemy's strength and striking when they were fatigued. His troops advanced and retreated with the swiftness of wind, striking with the terrifying impact of a massive thunderbolt. They miraculously secured 5 consecutive victories in 5 brutal engagements, utterly devastating the massive Chu army across all fronts, causing them to abandon their armor and completely collapse. The Wu army authored a mythical tale of military conquest, riding their unstoppable momentum to directly breach Chu's grand capital. The terrifying assault forced the old king of Chu out, fled frantically into the night in utter humiliation. Just another casualty. This exhausting Game of Thrones. Just take a moment to grasp the magnitude of this achievement. It is like a modest local militia capturing a global superpower's capital. Just through impossibly precise strategic maneuvering and god-tier micromanagement. It remains an exceptionally rare triumph, immortalized in the annals of history. His 30,000 warriors proved his book wasn't just empty rhetoric. It was a profoundly lethal, dragon-slaying masterclass in warfare. The state of Wu leaped from a minor state to an absolute hegemon. Why on earth would they let a foreign outsider be commander-in-chief? King Helu read the 13 chapters and slapped the table in admiration. The text is pretty, but could this young fellow actually lead troops, or was he just a pedantic scholar, skilled only in armchair strategy? Then comes the absurd anecdote of training the troops in the palace. This was the dramatic scene that essentially forced the king to trust him. The king wanted to test him with an incredibly difficult challenge. He read the book, but wanted a practical demonstration right there. He asked him to train the ladies of his inner palace into an army. What a perfectly normal and reasonable request from a monarch. Faced with this completely unreasonable request, Sun Wu simply said he could. The king selected 180 beautiful palace maids for him. He even assigned his 2 most beloved concubines as the captains. Sun Wu stood on the platform, explaining the maneuvers with absolute clarity. Turn left or right when you hear the drumbeat, simple enough. Finding the whole affair highly amusing, the maids giggled and jokingly agreed. But when he struck the drum, these pampered girls completely ignored his commands. They just collapsed into fits of laughter, like it was all a game. Sun Wu did not display anger, instead calmly blaming himself as the general. Thus, he patiently reiterated the rules 3 more agonizing times. He struck the drum again, yet the palace maids treated it as a game. The 2 favored concubines laughed uproariously, even rolling their eyes at him. At that exact moment, the atmosphere instantaneously plummeted to freezing. Sun Wu abruptly drew his long sword, his voice chilling to the bone. He declared the orders were clear, so the crime lies with the captains. According to military law, those who disobey orders shall be beheaded. The panicked king frantically sent a messenger with an urgent decree. He begged the general not to kill his 2 beloved concubines, because apparently his royal food would completely lose its flavor without them. Everyone assumed Sun Wu would use this convenient excuse to back down. Instead, he roared that a field general ignores the sovereign's commands. With a merciless swing, the 2 arrogant concubines were instantly decapitated. Well, that is certainly one way to ruin a perfectly good afternoon. Crimson blood stained the ground, terrifying the remaining palace maids. He struck the drum a third time in a deathly silence. The maids executed their movements with absolutely flawless uniformity. They absolutely would not dare to show the slightest hesitation now. An iron-blooded, fiercely disciplined army had been forged in a single day. The king fundamentally understood he was dealing with a cold-blooded machine. This paved the way for commanding the army and completely flattening Chu. But the ultimate conclusion of this story leaves everyone with endless questions. Just as the king was preparing to lavishly reward his meritorious officials, this unparalleled god of war made a choice nobody anticipated. He vanished. Historical records present totally divergent opinions regarding his final whereabouts. Some speculate he saw through the king's growing arrogance in later years, the classic cruel trope of storing the bow when the birds vanish. So he returned his gold to live as a recluse in the mountains. Others suggest he quietly returned to his ancestral home to live in peace. Unlike his close friend who was later forced to commit suicide, Sun Wu utilized his overarching wisdom to flawlessly preserve his own life. His greatest achievement wasn't actually the sheer number of battles he won. He elevated brutal, bloody warfare into the highest possible dimension of philosophy. People mistakenly assume he only teaches how to slaughter and wage war, but the absolute zenith of his military philosophy is actually non-combat. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without actually fighting. The fundamental essence of war is preservation, never utter destruction. The highest realm of strategy is absolutely not death, but lasting peace. He waded through endless mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Yet he bequeathed the military manual overflowing with reverence for human life. I guess this is why he is forever revered as the true military sage. 2.5 millennia have flowed by since that ancient era. The flashing swords, resounding battle drums have faded into history, yet his radiant wisdom continues to shine in every corner of the globe. From blood-soaked battlefields to the treacherous arenas of modern commerce, the wise man who carved characters onto bamboo slips continues to guide us. He teaches us how to see the true essence of this complex world and position ourselves in a state of absolute, invincible invulnerability. That brings us to the exhausting end of today's little story. If you crave more top-tier historical strategies, just like and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments or just close the tab. Next time, we will drag ourselves through more sweeping epics of history.